between 91 and 89, to Montpelier.
You probably
St.
could
Johnsbury.
probably could take the trail to work here now.
Who has ancient roads? Who's responsible for ancient? Huh?
We're alive. We're alive.
Alive. Okay, let's get started.
Michelle
Morning.
now.
Who?
Michelle now.
Oh. Another one from Michelle.
I'm gonna try this one more time. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Science Transportation Committee. We're going to continue our discussion as we started yesterday. Short overviews of what's happening in the agency. Folks going to talk about different subjects this morning. We'll start off with Wayne Gamble, Director of the Fleet Maintenance Division of the Agency of Transportation. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Wayne Gamble. I'm the Division Director for District Maintenance and Fleet. I know that we all know each other. You know our division pretty well, so I'm going to just kind of hit the highlights as you all have the presentation in front of you. Right now, I'm looking at apparently we're not able to get it right this moment, but I'm looking at the org chart. I did want to let you know, in case you're looking for them, although you can always come to myself or Todd Law, my deputy. The Southeast Regional District Administrator is actually out on extended leave. So Rob Fairley, who is the Southwest Region, is the interim District 2 person, and Kevin Gadapi, who is the District 6 and Technical Service Group, is the interim for District 4. But if you need anything, just come to myself and I'll make sure you get to where we'll need to. But I do want to let you know about that. I'm going to the next slide, the District Maintenance and Fleet Division. Just a quick overview. We have in our division over 550 employees, and we maintain the infrastructure and the vehicles and equipment that's necessary to perform our work. We have 9 districts now. We brought back District 6 a year and a half, 2 years ago. That was, you all know that went away for a while, but District 6 is now known as the Capital Region.
That obviously it was there thought that could be covered and save money? It turned out to be too big a district and too much to manage.
Yeah, people had concerns that they weren't getting the level of service, especially towns that were, we had some towns, for example, that would have to.
Did you put this thing on? Is this thing on the committee webpage?
It says, oh, you're talking about the.
Yeah.
There.
There we go.
We're on boy slides.
Well, who's doing it right here?
He is.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
He still doesn't want to go up.
There we go.
Another one. One more.
Now we got to Todd.
There you go. So what happened is, so people like, for example, in Washington, the town of Washington, we're having to talk to somebody in St. Johnsbury or Derby, Port area. So we brought back District 6, the Capital Region, so that we brought back those original towns that were part of that. It just makes it easier and closer for everyone.
They all work together.
They do. Well,
Districts, yesterday, just for example, Senator Starr was talking about, I heard he was unhappy with the roads or something. He said, well, the district, you leave one district, and the other one doesn't solve the other district.
It's a matter of timing when to me, I have the same thing on Route 2 where you see, and it's just a matter of timing when the one truck is making the loop, and I think it's, what is amount of time by the time they do their route, at least an hour.
They're 2 to 2.5 hours
So
when we're fully staffed.
So it stands to reason.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just right there. Yeah.
But it has to do with just how that route and the truck times relative to where the next section
And
begins.
the garage, right. So, for example, as you're going around across Route 2, when you get by the reservoir,
It changes.
that's a
I
bridge.
think so, yeah.
So one comes from West Danville, goes out there. The other one actually comes from North Montpelier. So that's the very end of their route. So, yeah.
So when their territory ends, they just turn around and go back.
Correct. Now, if, like, for example, the reservoir, there's a 3-lane hill right there. So if they got that person from North Montpelier, even though their route ends at the bottom of the hill, if they saw it was bad, they'd go to the top of the hill and hit it. Right. The other thing that's happening right now is we have 42 vacancies right now.
Well,
So that 40 of those are plumber drivers, or So we have that and empty trucks. Now, when I say empty trucks, we have the other people who are putting in there, but they're not normal drivers. So we have our managers, we have some supervisors, they all have CDLs, or most of them do. We've put a call out across the agency, anybody who's willing to do it, nights and weekends, we'll get them their CDL, because we have a CDL training center at our training center.
Well, you do it yourself, like.
We do.
Bill
We're
and
actually,
stuff, yeah.
we're certified with the feds, federal groups for
Oh,
CDL
good.
training. In February, March of this year, the laws changed, and us being a CDL, getting a CDL license and holding it is much harder than it used to be. Before, if you could drive a vehicle, you came off a farm and you could
Right,
drive the
right,
trucks,
right,
you
right.
could just take the test, and if you could pass, you were done. Not anymore. You have to actually have, they're not defined hours, but you have to prove to a certified instructor that you can do certain aspects. And you get scored for each of those aspects. So you have to have driving time now, showing
Right.
people. So it's not as easier as it was before.
Is that CDL training available to municipalities?
Hours.
Yes.
So F&A will be coming in. We had this conversation the other day. The only thing is, we do a lot for the municipalities on trainings.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd like you to talk to them. I don't want to answer and have the wrong answer. I do know though, I need our staff, of course, trained as,
Yeah, the first priority, but
Yeah.
if you had an empty seat, so to speak.
then I don't see why not. But again, Jana will be coming in and they should be able to.
We must have to restructure our pay, increase, because at one time it was like $17 an hour to start.
Yeah, our start, it was actually even more than that, not too long ago, but 14, 15. But we're now up to, I believe, around, with no CDLs, so we'll train you to get it, but with no CDL, around 20 to 21.
Say you have to, because everybody else in construction is paying. That's the problem everybody's facing. Is one guy, he'll go to work for somebody else, $2 more or $5 more.
Yeah, and they do chase that, yeah. Of course, we try to explain to them, we have a whole lot of benefits though
Yeah,
that
that's right.
that are worth
That-
40, 50%
Some
more.
of the young people, they
So-
don't look at the benefits.
Part of the whole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
So that number of openings, how does that compare to other years? 'Cause it seems, at least the 4 years I've been here, there's been a number of openings.
Yeah, last year at one point, we were at 72.
Wow.
This fall, we're coming into winter, we were around the 60 mark, but we're down to 42 right this moment. We've had some luck. The biggest hole right now is in the northwest, so that's the Burlington and St. Albans.
Yeah, that's
Piece.
a competitive area.
And we have, out of the 42, we have 25 vacancies in that area. So I think there's 8 up in the St. Albans area, and the remaining ones are in the Burlington area.
Yeah, Chittenden County, because you got big contractors like SD Ireland and all these folks. Ireland's got 500 trucks.
I wanted you to know, their trucks that they decorate for Christmas are spectacular.
Yeah,
There's one,
they're good.
he's parked up by just about 2 miles from my place. They park it 24 hours a day there. It's still there. Yeah, they do. They travel around.
I know, well, we've seen them all over in the kingdom, and they really are, they
Yeah,
are really
yeah.
amazing. Even the wheels, I mean, everything is.
For the Christmas tree lighting, they have.
Did you see our Rudolph?
It's.
We
Yeah, I
we
did view
decorated
that
one
here,
too. Not, we didn't have as many lights, but we had
Yeah.
over 4,000 lights on it.
Only for that. And how long does the CDL training take?
Depends on the person. We'll move it as fast as they can do themselves. So in other words, it's all on your skill sets when you get in it, how quickly it takes you to learn. So when we bring somebody in new, they're on probation for 6 months, they need to get it before the end of that 6 months. Now, if we do something that slows them down, we extend it, but they need to be able to get it within that period of time. The other problem that we're having to hire a lot of people that don't have CDLs. So even though I'm saying we have 42 vacancies, we probably have another 40 that don't have CDLs that we've hired, that we're in the process of trying to get them. So that means they're not in our CDL equipment. We're having to put them in non-CDL equipment. And you'll see that in some of the pictures we have coming up. But it's been a struggle. We work really close with the weather stations and channels and National Weather Services and stuff. They give us updates. I got one just a few minutes ago. That's why I was telling you about this afternoon tonight. So when we get,
Bad weather this afternoon?
yeah, some freezing rain and stuff. It's supposed to come snow, then it's going to continue to warm up, get some freezing rain and go to
rain
I have to
overnight.
leave now, I think. To avoid the bad weather, Mr. Chair. You're the ones that both of us will go.
Yeah.
Um,
Are these, the plow trucks, the big trucks, are they air brakes or hydraulic?
Air.
Air, so yeah, so
Yeah,
that's a
that piece too.
complication, yeah, complication with CDL with that.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so we move people around if we have to. If we know that the storm's gonna be in the north, we may move some people from the south up, put them in hotels if we need to. That sort of things, moving people around.
Wow.
Some of the storms have been in the north because Route 9 had Chena
Mhm.
requirements. They really got hammered,
They did.
southern part of the state. We
Yep.
didn't get much.
Right, so we will move people if we have to.
And you did
Yeah,
probably then.
And we'll extend, so what we do is we try to minimize the route. So District 3 will push, because it's right above District 1, they'll push people south. District 5 will push people south, that sort of thing. So you're not having to move somebody from Newport to Bennington or something like that. We try to do that as much as possible, so.
One other question on workforce. Do you see CDL drivers or just drivers in general moving from municipalities to the state or vice versa?
Both. They'll go both ways. Because we have a training center, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest, they.
I wondered if you were
people come
training
to
them
us.
up and then they would
Yeah,
leave.
that does
to go
happen.
to the municipalities. But also sometimes.
Sometimes it comes the other way, probably not as much, but it does come the other way too.
Well, nomads that may use it, really trains it, but then they have to stay, they have to get up owners, they have to stay 6 months, and, you know, it tries to keep going.
Yeah.
That is a problem.
Yeah, plus, it's tough. Our job's tough, especially in the winter time where you kind of give your life up for the, 4 or 5 months anyways, so.
When I was
And
on the select board, we were just stealing CDL snowplow drivers from other towns. So.
it happens, for sure. That, like you were saying, sometimes the younger people will chase the dollar and they're not able to worry about the benefits at
Or
that
it's
point in
just
time.
dynamics. So with a small crew, you gotta get along. So if there's somebody
Yeah,
just would
sure.
fit in with those guys, they would move to different towns.
But as I was saying, we have 9 districts, 5 regions. We also, so the difference with the
Okay, go ahead.
The difference with the capital region, most of the regions have 2 districts. Capital region only has 1, but that's because they have the statewide technical group, which travels everywhere. So we have environmental hazmat as part of that, bridge as part of that, our drilling crew that goes out and does drillings to cores to check, when they're going to build a new bridge or road or something, we have to check out what's below it. So they're part of it. And what else do we have in there that I'm missing? Yeah, I'm not up that slide yet, I'm sorry, but anyways, we'll get to that in a moment. The district maintenance one with a map on it. Only thing I want to tell you here is just that map is the new map, and I will be getting you one for your wall if you'd like one. This just has, oh, it does, okay, thank you. This one has everybody's name, phone number, and email address around the state if anybody needs that. As I was talking about earlier, the performance section, the bridge crew, we have a statewide bridge crew that's based out of Montpelier, and each of the districts have bridge crew members out in the districts. The pollution prevention and compliance section, we have GIS, we have people that do GIS, they do that we're always doing asset management. We look at all of our culverts. We do 20% of our culverts every year. You're going to hear that we have about 44,000 culverts. That's because a 6-foot culvert and bigger is considered a bridge. But if you count those two, the culvert style, we're working up towards 69 to 70,000. So we do 20% of those every year, inspect them. So every 5 years, all of them are being inspected.
Do you now have an inventory of all?
We do, yeah. We also signs, guardrail, all those things work also. GIS also is very big for when we have an emergency like the storm that we had a little while back. To try to track costs, we can track it by town, county, and statewide. And that way, and it's a running total, the GIS puts it into 123, survey 123. And that is a it continuously builds and goes up. So that way, Vermont Emergency Management gets to see it. And that way they know when they've hit those limits and right when they hit it. So it's a live count. So that's really big and helpful.
When your asset management, is that the same asset management system that BGS uses? Which is totally different.
I don't know if they use that or not, to tell you the truth, I'm sorry. We have our own asset management that's in highway, and then maintenance, because we have so many people spread out around the state, we do the asset management inspections. We put it in, they all have laptops or iPads and they're punching it in, and that way it feeds Kevin Marshy and that group's information. And then we use it to know which pipes we have to work on first, or the plug and we need to clean them, that sort of stuff.
But you also use that for all your buildings and things like that, not just the assets on the roads.
All right, so yes, our facility does have a system that they track it, yes, and it's like with BGS, they work with BGS like facilities, yep. Yep. In the performance management program, they just make sure that we have best management practices and performance measures to make sure we're doing the best we can. Now, what we do, this is just a list of some of them, I don't need to read them, you all know what we do. It's a wide variety of things, for sure.
Making litter, that's a full-time job, I think, year round.
Yeah, we have been doing it year round, yes.
It's unbelievable.
And just so you know, last year, our litter total was 436 tons.
Unbelievable.
You can go to the next slide, pick it up there. The one here is our highlights of maintenance, just some of them water costs. The top line is the 5-year average. The middle dark line is 22, and the bottom line is the 21. You can see that we spent $17,900,000 on winter last year. That does not include equipment. Our equipment used to be tracked by the hour. It was a lot more of a pain. We also had to pay by the hour through Central Garage. So to make things easier and not have literally 10,000 bills coming into, or payments coming into CG a month, we went to a possession rate, thank you. So every month
It does make a lot more sense.
We sent them a check.
That other system seems so complicated.
it was.
So your 17, almost 18 million is essentially labor and sand, salt.
Materials, yeah, and then the other, it's about 18 million for the year for our equipment, so divide that up by 12. And then over to the side, you'll see just some of the maintenance by numbers. The maintenance section has 452 employees, 374 licensed, one, we have 64 garages, and you can see some of the stuff that we've done over last year. One of the big things I do want to mention to you is our salt prices.
Yeah, I saw that, $84.
Yeah, 84, and our highest is in the St. Johnsbury area, and that's 107. The problem is they were having, I know we're assuming that the problem for some of the suppliers is they're having employee shortages too. And then the trucking, it comes in by trains, but then they get a truck from all over. We have some come out of Canada, a lot of it comes out of New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio areas. And they get it here, but then it's gotta be trucked and then it has to be stored. So they were having some trouble with getting truckers to get salt to our places. So they would honor the contracts to the amount. So for example, St. Johnsbury, their average is like 17,000 tons. I'll make sure I'm saying it right. And so they would honor up to that, but anything over that, they can't guarantee us that they're going to be able to get a salt, for example. And if they do, it's going to go to 117, not 107.
Is it a different kind of salt
Yeah,
to
it's
do the
expensive.
brine?
No, same exact.
Thanks.
Same
So
exact.
you don't have to do two different. It's not like cooking table salt versus kosher salt versus pickling salt.
Yeah, no, it's just a big rock salt, and
And is that salt a manufactured product, or is it come in a big rock and they just crush it?
Mine.
it's mine.
Mine.
They
Great
literally,
Lakes.
literally go down it. Yeah, New York has a bunch, Ohio, Pennsylvania. They literally just dig big mines down and they get the machinery, they scoop it up. So that's why if they don't have enough people to do all this, it's harder.
And the supplier, I don't know,
You're a truck.
well, yeah, but is it, what's the supplying? Used to be Sipco was one.
So American is one that's out of New York in that area. I'm sorry, I'll get you the names if you want.
No, it
the names.
doesn't matter.
They're our largest one. Cargill, is we have others, but there's really only like 3 or 4 that bid, so it's tough. Yep.
This is all just fiscal, even though it says refreshed on 12/2, it's just FY '22.
Correct. Yeah, this is what we were just getting things ready. Next slide. This is our bridge maintenance program. So I know you all know that Highway has a bridge inspection team that go out. When they go out and inspect the bridges, they will send us findings. And this just shows how many findings from that group that we had over the last few years and then what it costs to fix those findings. So.
But it would be your staff that would do the washing of the bridges.
Correct, we do.
Or any of the standard maintenance.
Correct, yeah.
You're
But
doing a lot more Washington, which is
so we-
preventive.
yeah, we wash 100%. Our goal is to wash 100% of the decks and 50% of everything below the substructure below that. And then so that way every other year, all the bridges are washed. Yep, we do that every year.
These number of projects, like 20 findings, is that out of how many, or 36?
Those, so they're expecting, they inspect, well, I believe, I don't want to speak to them, but I'm pretty sure that they inspect every bridge every other year, the highways inspectors, unless they know there's an issue and they'll inspect it every year or less, depending
So
on
it's
what's going on.
36 out of thousands of inspections.
Yeah, our actual standards we're actually well above, we're well below the national, what the AASHTO and the Fed say we need to be at for our bridges. We're way better. That's both town and state and on our interstates. Yeah, they'll be in this concept that.
So when the term finding, when you do an inspection, is there a finding for every inspection? So the finding is excellent versus needs repair, or does finding mean if there's a deficit that needs to be corrected?
That they'll find something that needs to be fixed. So what my goal is to never have to put in a new culvert or put in something new. My goal is to just fix them until the highway division can get something programmed. It takes 3 to 5 years to get something programmed and get it out when we're talking about the work, that sort of work. Now, as you all know, it can go a lot longer when you run into environmental issues or other things, but it's 3 to 5 years on average. So our job in maintenance, in my mind, is to keep whatever that asset is safe until they can do a replacement. So that's why I don't really like having to put new culverts in. I'd rather do a port invert, put a liner in to buy those few years to get it to, so that way the feds can also pay for it, but we're not using state dollars. My budget, as you know, is almost all state dollars. So on the slide that has the pictures of maintenance, these are just some examples of what our forces will do. We will use contractors to do some of this. You've heard of the IDIQ and job contracts. Those are our contracts with local contractors to help us do some of this work if we're not capable or don't have enough resources to do it ourselves. So this is some of the stuff that we've done.
What did the Newport picture, the before picture looks better than the after picture.
Which one?
The Newport, like what went on there? Maybe it's just because there's water flowing and the other one is stagnant, and it looks like it's, a perched culvert kind of. So what was that project?
The bottom of the culvert that's inside was rotted out.
Rotted out. So
Yeah.
it's just like eroded the dirt.
Put a new in it, yeah. Because it was, what happens when pipes rot out? That's why, I don't know if you've ever heard of a port invert, but they make manufactured ones now. But you used to cut out the bad section of the pipe, and then we'd lay steel and then pour concrete in it. And then to working with ANR and our, with fisheries and
Right.
People, we could put in rocks or baffles, things like that into the concrete, so the fish would have a place other things would have a place to rest and stuff. So we'll do that sort of thing to buy time, as I said, before they can get into a full fix. But that fix right there won't be there for years and
And
years.
if you didn't fix it, it would just erode away.
It would, and then the road would start caving in because all the fines would get washed out. Yeah, that's when you start seeing sags in the middle of the roads. That's usually what's happening. So we try to stay ahead of that, of course.
And do you do maintenance only on roads, like the airport maintenance is in the airport division, or does that maintenance?
It is in the airport. However, we do work with them quite often. They'll help us, we'll help them. Yeah, they're having some of the same issues with finding help. So, yeah. So I'm actually going to have Jen come up. Jen is in the pollution prevention and compliance section. She's we're experts in this. It's just a one pager, and then Dave's going to come up after that. But I just wanted you to talk to the two experts in their world. So yeah, and you can use that slide if you want.
Sure, so I'm Jen Callahan, and I work in the maintenance and fleet division under the
pollution prevention and compliance section. I am in the water quality unit. I've been here before. I think I've spoken to all of you, but I'll give you a brief overview. If you have questions, let me know, or I can always come back at another time for more information. In the water quality division, a lot of what we do is maintenance and compliance of our permits, especially our smaller stormwater permits are our biggest ones. You may have heard of the transportation separate storm sewer system, TS4.
That's a
Got that one? And what that is, it's an umbrella permit that kind of encases all of our other permitting requirements. So the MS4, which is mainly around Chittenden County, it has things like public education and outreach, asset management, pollution prevention, all those different good housekeeping at our facilities. The multi-sector general permit, which is a permit for our airports and our sand and gravel pits. And then also the TMDL, which is total maximum daily loads. You guys are all familiar with that. All of our TMDL and impaired waters compliance falls under that also. So the Lake Champlain TMDL, Lake Memphremagog TMDL, all our implementation of that falls under that part. So that's a lot of what we do. We do a lot of other things. We do reviews of program projects to see, just kind of looking at what they're proposing for stormwater best management practices and what our maintenance needs might be down the road for those, because the permits kind of stay with the land and are forever. So once we have a stormwater BMP, we have to maintain it and keep it functioning for forever.
So you have to work with A&R all the time.
Those, all of those, well, those are federal and state permits, but the A&R is a delegated, in Vermont is delegated. So yeah, we work closely with A&R.
How many people in this section?
In our section, so in water quality, we have myself and 3 other stormwater techs. In the hazardous, the hazmat unit, they have 3 hazmat techs, and then we also have Craig DiGiamarino, who I think has come in the past. You may have met. DG. He is he supervises all of us. He oversees the whole unit, divided section. We're a section.
Well, yes, you sort of asked it. I remember when everybody was up at National Light, and this was, it seemed like everybody was saying that facilitated so much of the work that across both agencies. And now you're in Barry. I don't know where they are anymore.
Or they're all at home.
I was
They're all
gonna say,
at home.
yeah, so
So I was wondering, you know, how you've been able to maintain that close working relationship, because before that, it seemed like it may have been a little more difficult, or you had a different perspective than maybe the A&R folk did. So they're not in Barry, right?
A&R.
Yeah, A&R is not in Barry.
no, they're at National Light still.
They're still at National.
Yeah, they are.
So I was just wondering, has that made it more difficult, or if you just, once you get practices in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of cultivating those relationships. I mean, certainly, it's not like we run into each other in the hallway like we did when we were all at National Light. But I think the bigger impact was COVID and all being remote, and you know, I think the majority of A&R, at least the people I interact with, are remote most of the time. So you know, it's a lot of virtual meetings, which is actually that's actually been helpful, I'd say, from when we did do the move out of National Life. I feel like, and we cultivated those relationships really well. So that has just kind of continued, you know.
There was a question I was gonna ask Secretary yesterday, but if you guys know how many of AOT employees are working remotely? Like, is that building, because I know A&R, my daughter did AmeriCorps there, and she said there's nobody in that, you know, that big space where there used to be hundreds of people, there's just like 5.
Well, from my division, we're pretty much all working from our locations because you can't plow from home.
So, right, maintenance folks.
So you gotta remember, we're about 550, 560 people. So out of they're almost 1,300, half of them are working from home. I mean, working from our garages and offices.
Can't work remotely.
It's it would be the other divisions that you'd have to ask them what their percentages are. I'm not sure, sorry.
That's good. I just wondered.
And I think there are folks that are also doing a hybrid. They're
Yeah,
coming in the office a certain number of days and
Right.
working.
Yeah, like
So I think that,
couple
yeah,
days a week.
I definitely couldn't answer that question.
And I assume there's some crossover between A&R water quality folks and V-Trans water quality folks, like somebody might have worked at A&R and then
I
they go
used to
work.
work at A&R.
I did.
I did. I worked in the stormwater section at A&R. And Andy Shively, who heads our hazmat unit, worked in the hazardous materials unit, or I forget what their waste management in A&R. So there is some, I think that might be it, but yeah, there's definitely some, which,
Probably
and
not.
that helps with,
Yeah,
that helps with relationships because they're my old colleagues.
yeah.
What is that tank
Small
right
state.
there? Just that picture.
Oh, you're asking me a hazmat question.
Yeah.
Water quality.
Fuel tank?
That looks like a fuel tank to me, probably an underground tank. It looks like there's a hole there that
Oh,
they probably had to take out.
no.
I think we have,
Leaking underground storage
We've pretty much
tanks.
got rid of all of our underground tanks, so we have some still, but
very low number.
very few. And right now,
We still have a report on
One
Lost
more.
report?
the lost report, yeah.
we moved them above. We have above.
Is that list? Yeah.
And Wayne, the new garage, I think it was in Lunenburg, where you guys put in the heat pumps and all of that stuff.
That's Tunbridge.
Tunbridge,
Tunbridge.
didn't you put one up north though? Didn't you just put a brand new, no, maybe I misunderstood. I thought it
We're
was.
building a new one, it's gonna be building a new one in St. Albans. Lunenburg got postponed because we actually didn't get any bids.
Okay.
Didn't get any money.
But those heat pumps are working good?
So Brad McAvoy will be coming in for facilities.
Yeah. Okay.
I believe so, yes. I'm not hearing anything bad.
Good.
But they just put them in last summer.
Yeah, they've been putting some in and they're continuing. Like, for example, I know St. Albans heat pumps is what they're looking at right now. And they're working with BGS to find out what they're doing to latest.
We had one of those last year a little bit further north because it was a cold day and they said they had just opened the garage and it was cold and they went in and it was like 10 below and they went in and it was nice and comfy and toasty and all that, but I must misunderstood.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it probably happened in one of our older garages. I can't think of any new garages that we've
Okay.
built.
Tunbridge is an old garage. That was retrofitted. right?
We retrofitted that one. Now, that one is pretty much green.
Yeah, some of these garages were there a long time.
Some of them, and just so you know, Dave will get into it in a moment, but we're actually working on getting an electric loader for Tunbridge
Yeah.
also. And we get an electric excavator and we're gonna be getting more of those too. So we're looking to go electric. Dave will get into that.
Oh, I guess I can mention the hazmat unit. Generally, they do similar work to us, but with focusing on hazmat. So emerging contaminants, hazard site management, spills. They have a response to all the spills that happen along our roads and our facilities.
Well, that can be expensive, removing hazmat material, boy, there's some areas that cost you millions of dollars to get it back to.
And then you have to store it, you know.
Oh, that's right. You got to truck it somewhere, right?
Dispose of it, which is,
Right.
And that's the worst thing.
You have to
Can't
truck
just
it
dump it somewhere else.
can't just put it, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're.
What can happen with trains too that derail?
Yeah. And they also, we work together with them a lot on pollution prevention and source control at the facilities. Just a brief overview of what they do.
Nice.
Dave, just like Dave, you're up.
Thank you.
Morning. Good morning.
Morning.
For the record, my name is Dave Thurber, Superintendent / Fleet Manager for Central Garage. Briefly about me, I'm 4 months into my 24th year with the agency and all of those years at Central Garage.
I don't know if this is, are you related at all to Pam Zuckerberg who retired?
Yes, Pam is my wife.
Oh, I hope she's enjoying retirement.
She retired for 2 days, went back to work on a Monday, and she said federal highway.
Oh, okay.
So she didn't stay retired for very long.
No, I guess.
Retirement is pretty boring, you know.
Yeah, I asked her Sunday night, I said, how was retirement? She said, not very good. And she actually may be listening in now.
Oh,
So, 24 years there almost, we're working on it. Then just about 6 months into the superintendent's position. So there's a lot of things I'm still learning. This is my very first time sitting here in this position. I've been on the bench before, but
I'm sure Pam warned you how difficult we are.
Yeah.
so
The central garage is here in Montpelier.
it's on
Okay, yeah, right over there at the bottom of the hill, yeah.
and that building's been there since 1955.
It's probably in a floodplain.
Yes.
Yes.
we are. Yes, we are. So, as it says here, we have approximately 275 dump trucks. About 250 of those are mainline trucks. We keep about 20 to 25 spares. So if we have breakdowns of our mainline trucks during the winter, we have something available for the drivers to continue on with. Yeah. Many pickups with plows, 55 loaders, 5 graders, and we support other agencies as well as DMV. We supply their cruisers and pickups and other things to other sections that need some help or need vehicles.
Now, last year in the budget, we actually altered, I think, our replacement cycle, and we were concerned about
We
the
altered it, we keep it
aging
the same.
fleet. Wasn't
Well,
there?
many years ago, this committee wanted to make sure they traded the trucks.
I
every so
thought
many
last year there was an extension of the replacement schedule.
No, I try to hit the 8-year mark.
years. Yeah,
For
I thought it
the
was
dump
8
trucks.
years, you know.
We did hold back and not get some of the stuff. I don't know what was last year. I was thinking it was the year before, but we did hold back on some vehicles, maybe trucks or something. I can't remember. what
Well,
it
it's
was.
probably hard to get some of them. I don't
No,
know.
it was actually budgeted.
Yeah.
It was
I'm with
budgeted.
you, yeah.
The replacement
Yeah.
cycle was altered a bit.
Yep.
And I was just wondering, well, we're gonna be having the budget presentation. I'm just wondering if in
Right.
fact,
It is. It'll be-
it'll be back.
The last thing we want is trucks that are 12.
Well, it's in the-
years old.
It's back. What Blake is telling you, it's
What do you
back.
mean?
Well, there was always a concern about adhering to a replacement schedule so that you had the quality of your fleet that wasn't aging and therefore more repairs and reliability. And sometimes in order to save money, you extend that 8-year to 9 years or whatever for budgetary reasons. And it was done either last year or the year before, and now
They did what, did last year? They just.
they,
waited
rather
added
than
the-
trading
added
in
the
at
year.
8 years, they
Yeah.
moved it to 9. So it was,
For the whole fleet.
well,
Pieces on.
uncertain.
Pieces.
So that was my question, is are we extending that replacement life cycle for budgetary purposes?
Oh, So we're back to an 8-year cycle that we're trying to, hear stuff on that.
And you budget for that, like you're putting that money aside every year for the 8-year replacement. It's not like every 8 years.
Yeah, so every year, our equipment fund is made up of basically 3 parts. Depreciation of the fleet, the supplemental transfer, which is a percentage of the budget, which
It's a statute.
it is a statute,
But
but
we
it,
sometimes not withstand that.
not too often, a few times over the years that I remember, but
Transfer from where, just from the general.
Some-
From the T fund.
yes, from T fund. That accounts sort of for inflation, and then any auction proceeds that we get from selling our stuff is coming out of service. So that makes up our equipment fund each year. I'm just trying to stick to the 8 years for the dump trucks in particular. The spares that we have will be 9. If it's a good truck, we might keep a few for 10 years, just because it's been a good truck. It works, so.
The auction proceeds go back into a certain fund, it goes back into the equipment funds and stuff like that.
It goes to the equipment.
So I have several friends that are in equipment business and through this pandemic, they've just been wild. Are we seeing higher prices as far as on the proceeds of the auctions?
Yes, yeah, I believe so.
Well, yeah, used trucks were hit an all-time peak this last year nationwide. We were the highest ever.
One of our used DMV cruisers, unfortunately, the person did not pay for it, but it hit 30,000, which is a big number for us for Chevy pickups.
Yeah, but those things are loaded in terms of.
Yeah, they get cream of the crop. They all used to select what they want.
Yeah.
I think they had TVs in them.
I think so, probably.
Mini fridge.
Stereo.
Heated seats.
Yeah, right.
So the other reason for a reasonable amount of time for turnover is so that we get the latest technology in our vehicles as well. So we have the most up-to-date emissions equipment on them, most up-to-date fuel economy and things like that.
Do the plows transfer to new ones, or you get the whole unit or something?
We buy new plows with new trucks.
Okay.
Generally by auction time, they're pretty well worn out.
Yeah.
Who's buying?
We have quite a variety of customers. We've had some resellers from Canada, we've had some resellers from Maine.
Oh, I see.
We do have some Vermont citizen residents that come in and buy a dump truck now and then.
The resellers will buy like plow trucks, fix them up a little bit, sell them to the municipality somewhere else in the country.
Yes, I don't know how much fixing up they do, but yes, that's basically what they'll do. Maine, there's a lot of private contractors that plow the logging roads and stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We had a company that would come down that was actually on TV for a while and watched one of their episodes and one of our dump trucks was in the background. That was kind of neat to see.
A plow in a truck was roughly a cost, 175.
So this slide, our tandem axles as of last year was in the $200,000 range at 195, 827.
Oh, that's right there. Oh, yeah, the fit up in the truck is not bad. The fit up is 82,000.
Yeah. And that varies a little bit depending
Right.
on what the districts have asked for equipment on the trucks.
We're out to bid, anybody can bid on it, international or.
Yeah, in fact, we did just do a bid for the chassis. They are on order. We're buying 9 Freightliners this year as sort of a test to see.
Oh, yeah, you haven't had Freightliner before.
No, we've had international.
International, that's the thought, yeah.
So,
We have 4 years ago.
yep,
Did you really have
Yeah.
to go or just go?
Yeah.
95.
I can afford
Then I just sent an email yesterday recommending a bid for the plowed body equipment for this next round of trucks.
Oh, wow.
Coming up this summer.
Yeah.
Like everybody, we've had issues
Yeah,
with supply,
Yeah,
but we're doing pretty well. We have new loaders on order. As Wayne mentioned, trying to buy a Volvo wheel electric loader. It is a small loader, but I'd like to put it in Tunbridge Garage to sort of keep their green thing going. I've actually had a chance to run it. It seems to go well.
they're gonna get better every year, you know.
Yeah.
As
Yes.
they go along, it's gonna get better, it's like cars.
One of the things that's slowing us down is our infrastructure on being able to, we really need some of this, the level 3 charging. We only have 7 facilities that actually have that capability.
Oh, yeah, that's right, I thought about that, you gotta upgrade
Yeah,
all
so-
that.
You have the capability to have a level 3 or had a level 3?
We have capability to have them at
So you have no level 3 now. I think that's what officials.
No,
We don't have level 3 chargers at our facilities, but we have level 3 other things in them. So we're working with our, remember I was just talking about Brad McAvoy. Facilities, we're working with him, and we're supposed to have a bid pretty soon to get those 7 taken care of, at least to get those.
Level 3s, that's a fast charge?
Yeah. And we have
I
13.
want to use fast charge all the time though. The battery use, like. That's what,
It's up to
That's what we've been
the
told.
manufacturer.
level 3 is, putting more stress on your battery. I don't know what it does.
It
but
can
it's-
degrade the battery over time.
Yeah, it
So-
can, yeah, it's not, it's supposedly not good to just do level 3 charging.
Place we need that though is that you get to plow trucks, you
Yeah.
gotta turn them around.
Yeah, you can't.
Can't sit around.
Sit there for 8 hours.
Right.
Well, maybe the technology will, be there, but you got a phase 3 power. Do you have that
Yes.
in all your garages?
No, just 7.
That's the capability.
So we have to work with the local power companies and things to be able to get that to us.
The other thing is you purchase, you don't, do your own fuel supply. You actually purchase, right, from,
You know, diesel, that sort of thing, yeah.
so you don't have to deal with
Right now, most of
storage
our,
tanks and all the.
right, most of our garages go to local dealer
Yeah.
filling station.
Oh, really? That's how they just get a
I've
credit
seen
card
them,
and just,
yes, up in Marty's.
Yeah. Yeah, we, because of the underground tanks and tanks were just so,
Yeah.
so much work. So we decided, so what we do is the
So it's
garages.
true of the state police as well.
Yeah, so the garages that are out kind of away from civilization, there's no close filling station. We usually keep 1 to 2 to 3,000 gallons in an above ground tank. But the ones that are close, they don't have that.
I've never seen a police car at a filling station.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have one.
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen one.
Never do, could you fill up at a municipality, I'm assuming, like if you really needed to? There's no need to.
We don't have a need right now, yeah, we haven't. I'm sure we could just because
Because they offer,
we're always working with towns.
right, because they often have their own.
Yeah, yeah.
Questions on that slide?
No?
We are a group of 52 individuals working hard to keep all this equipment running and
So,
safe.
But
for-
all the maintenance, does that come back to the central garage?
No, we have actually total 7 maintenance locations.
Okay.
So those mechanics are rated in districts and they're available in the winter all the
I
time.
would think, I would think that it's a long hike from Bennington to
Yeah,
Mary Montpelier
We
Road.
used to send them all back to Central
A lot of
Oregon
it,
years ago,
yeah.
but we created them out in the districts, so out in the regions. We don't have to do that.
let's see, so in fiscal year 22, I just ran this number recently. If we were to have to replace everything at once, it would be about $72 million. And our depreciated value is about 30. So,
That's the annual.
uh,
I'm sorry,
No, this is, let's see.
or how much has,
This
oh, the
is-
fleet,
Yeah, according to our software, that this is the value of the fleet as of the upgrade, so it's depreciated to that. You got that depreciation.
And how many,
Package buying new equipment.
how many plow trucks do you, replace a year?
If we stick with 30, we hit that 8-year cycle, we've been getting about 27 and 30, so we try, that will give us the 8-year replacement cycle.
And that's some of the things that we help out on what you were talking about,
Mhm.
slow it down.
Most recently, we had a couple of rescissions and we didn't buy pickups and we stuck with buying the plow trucks and some of the equipment. So to keep the trucks the big trucks in good shape. This was the first in the state all-electric Volvo excavator we purchased.
well, they gotta have some sort of a battery to run those things. That's been good use.
Yep, in the back there with a gray cover where it says Volvo is all battery.
What's the hours? What can you run that for?
Continuous running, they say it's good for 4 hours if you're running continuously, but at, I don't know that they hit that very often. You know, you dig a little bit sometimes, and depending on what you're doing, you stop. And anytime you stop moving, any, you know, boom or anything, it shuts off. So there's nothing that stays running to draw power. So, what we're finding, the biggest issue with it is if you have to drive it a distance to get to the next spot, that's when it really uses the most power.
Particularly for-
And you might see that this is in the shop. It's not in for repairs. We actually, it was in getting the thumb put on it so we can pick things up with these more easily.
You know, it comes with a generator and a umbilical cord to help if you're stuck down over a bank or
That's
something.
what I was gonna wonder.
Yeah, it does come with what they call the umbilical cord, and it's has the plug-in for the machine, but you can also attach a 110 like extension cord plug to it and run and plug it into a 5,500 watt generator, gas generator, in case you need to move it.
Senator Kitchell, what happens when you run out of electricity with a car?
When we get your pickup truck and tow yourself home.
She gotta get her. She doesn't have the car. Whose car was it?
Oh, it's my son.
Okay.
It's like 10:30 at night on Route 2. My son said, "Oh, Hail Mary, I'm going for it." And we made it almost 2 miles, but being a good farm boy, he had his pickup truck and a tow chain and got it home to get recharged. But when that thing goes beep, 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 and you're getting low.
Yep.
And you use a lot of power coming up through Franconia Notch.
Yeah.
And
And it was cold.
And it was cold.
So that's what we're trying here. So we're trying to get ahead of everything in the sense that we're looking to purchase a couple, like the Secretary was saying yesterday, that mid-level or category 6, 7 size trucks type thing, like a bucket truck type thing or our sign truck. And we want to get them placed in different areas of the state because power's something we got to pay attention to. But and we want to run them in the mountainous areas. We want to run them in the flat areas. We want to run them during the summer and the winter. And we're trying to learn the pros and cons. What's going to work for us and what's not, at least at this point in time. And that's why we're buying stuff. Our electric stuff, as you can see on that slide, it talks about it. About 46% of our small fleet is electric of some sort, right now, 46%. So we're working pretty hard at trying to get there. All of our fleet vehicles that we get from BGS, our F plates, have to be at least a hybrid electric at a minimum. And then the same thing with our T plates. They have to be at least a hybrid electric. Now, they have to be as long as we get them. If we can't get them and we need something, we gotta move forward. But we've been waiting on some for a year or more right now, trying to get them. But we're working there.
Hybrid makes sense. I mean, you got a choice anyway. You can't.
So that's why we say at least that.
10 years from now, it's different, but I said now it's.
But
Or you don't have a long travel.
Yeah.
We were coming back from Newport, Rhode Island, so that was, and
Did you walk the 2 miles?
no, my,
I don't
My-
know if it made
my son's mother-in-law came down,
Oh,
picked 2 of us up and then the thing is safe with the car and I said, I'm staying home. And Heather drove his truck back down and they were home within no time. But it was, he just knew he was taking a risk on the charge. And that was why I was saying the New Hampshire side of the network, there is nothing fast charge north of Manchester, southern New Hampshire. And so it really, if you're traveling up, through the Notch, which a lot of people do, into St. Johnsbury, you haven't got any much of a network there.
so Vermont, as you know, I believe we're at, Michelle will be coming in to talk about this, but I believe at every 30 miles we have something, but we're trying to get fast chargers at least 1 mile off from every exit. That's what we're working on next. So they are working on those things and they're trying very hard to do it, but Michelle is definitely involved in that. So
Yeah, well, it'd be good if you had an exit on St. Johnsbury,
Yep.
because you've got 2 interstates
yeah, exactly.
intersecting there.
What's the cost difference between something like that? And is it a lot?
This one was twice.
Twice.
Diesel, yeah.
So that's one of the reasons we're also, there's multiple reasons, but that's one of the reasons we're not going out and buying a big fleet of these, because we're trying to try stuff, right?
Right.
And
With it.
things are gonna change.
Yeah, the costs will come down as they get them out there.
We're looking at the skid steers, we're looking at electric skid steers, but they're kind of like in prototype world right now. And they're like, what, $260,000?
$225,000.
So, I mean, for skid steer that we get it for 70, or 60 or 70, normal, diesel one. So we're working with industry, we're working to try to get there, but we're trying to use our heads.
3 years ago, those weren't available.
Correct. Oh, and so we're using, the other thing is that we're doing a lot of, all the hand gas type tools, so chainsaws, all those sort of things. We've been moving to electric on those, light towers, message boards, everything that we can go electric, and everybody's loving them. Yeah. Crew loves that one. They love that thing. So they were concerned that they weren't gonna like it. They don't want to give it up now. So they have their places. We just gotta figure out the best places.
Must be quiet. I mean, it must be all that quiet.
Chainsaws, everything, we're going to electric, and everybody's loving it.
Chainsaws, nice, you just replace the battery.
Yeah, exactly.
Charge that one, yeah.
And a lot of hand tools.
All our
Yeah,
hands.
yeah, they're all.
What about your mowers? That was an issue a few years ago, because they were really expensive, and you do a lot of mowing with tractors.
Yeah, so we do have some zero turns. We've been trying to get some of those, but those also are 2 to 3 times what we can get a diesel one right now. But we're still watching. We're gonna try to get a few of them around just to learn their
But the
capabilities.
last one is contract.
There is. The contracts appears to like along the interstates, and then they do a lot of the secondary roads, but like anything, off exit 7 when you got a median down the road down into Barry, we do those sort of things. We do some of our own, but not a lot.
That one guy that has an electric mower, he really likes it a lot. He's had it now, I think this is on his 3rd year.
They're okay if you're doing your personal home or something like that.
Right,
You
yeah.
start trending miles.
Yeah.
If they don't last.
Right.
Doing it all day.
Yeah, 8 hour day.
The other thing that Dave is looking at is the trailer battery system.
Oh,
Talk about, you mentioned that.
the main is, there are some manufacturers that provide these large charging stations on wheels so that you can bring
Oh, I see,
that to the job site,
Okay.
plug in your equipment, and then when that needs to be recharged, of course, take it back to your shop, instead of having to haul the equipment back and forth all the time. So those things are becoming available. I don't know if our, Volvo, John Deere dealers would offer anything like that, because they offer more electric equipment, but it certainly is something that becoming available.
Any other questions?
Yeah, we're at the top, Dave, so I want to make sure.
Yeah, any other questions? Well, thank you. It was a great morning. Good presentation. Learn something every day, especially this electric.
Yeah, we do.
A lot to learn
Lots
about
to learn
that.
about that.
I was thinking about AAA, that when they get called, they're gonna have to have a generator or something, but to call on people because.
They'll tow you to the next charging station.
I don't think they'll tell you.
Oh, they will, I don't know.
I've talked to people that call the flatbed when their electric car ran out.
So with the AAA, what they gonna do?
They are starting to have these
Yeah,
little,
yeah, that's right.
they can give you for a few months.
Get you somewhere. Okay, thank you.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna take a 15-minute break. good service. Okay, good morning, and we're gonna reconvene. Ross McDonald's with us this morning for public transit, which is big issue in the state of Vermont, and I just was mentioning a few moments ago that start charging again. We had that year or so with no charging, so everybody will pay a little, and it'll be effective. Everybody share a little bit of it. So Ross, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. We go ahead and share my screen. And I think I need to be enabled.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and. I was just coming from the House committee, and we ran a little late, so I appreciate the patience. Together.
Who was the chair?
Sarah.
Sarah.
Yeah, I gotta send her a note if she wants to be.
She's the chair of appropriations, right?
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah.
Who's the vice chair of the House appropriations? Somebody new, because both the chair and the vice chair left.
Sean.
Okay. Okay.
Well, you gave a cover sheet just for Senate. You must have had one for House too.
I did. And I changed one of the slides that I gave Mike, but I think we're still pretty close. But thank you for having me. For the record, Ross McDonald. I'm the Public Transit Program Manager. I'm a resident of Peacham and been with the program for 16 years and the manager going on 4. I know that this group is not been here previously, but to remind you, we have a pretty large vision where we want to help people who are dependent on transit, provide access to employment and other modes, mitigate congestion, preserve air quality, promote efficient energy use, and advance the state's economic development objectives, all in a safe, reliable, and cost-effective, environmentally responsible manner. So we do touch upon a lot of areas and contribute to all of these efforts. And Vermont is in a really unique position where we are probably the most well-funded rural program than any other rural state in the nation, which really does put us in a responsible position to try to help other rural areas understand what they can do as we are working through the type of support that we're provided. Many states use Federal Transit Administration formula funds only, with maybe a few state dollars. For us, up to 47% of our budget comes from FHWA flex funds, or they flex FHWA funds into our FTA account at the federal level for us to contribute to the transit system. In addition to our budget, $44 million, $4 to $6 million also come from our local providers who help with those non-federal shares. As a result, we're able to provide fixed routes with ADA paratransit service. Some of our fixed routes in the less dense areas will deviate upon request to pick people up. We have a demand response program called Vermont Elders and Persons with Disability Program, and that works in conjunction as a braided system with the non-emergency medical transportation or the Medicaid demand response, having that all under one roof with our shared infrastructure and schedule and dispatch software is critical to maintaining the system as is. We support intercity services, and we have a transportation demand management program Go Vermont that I was able to work on 15 years ago. That really is to help employers and individuals find alternatives to single occupancy vehicles.
Yes. Maybe I missed it there, but which section do you put the microtransit into? The inner city?
No, that would be the demand response program. And we have the one pilot that's operating now in Montpelier, and we have announced 5 additional pilots.
But you have the demand response that's for Mount Elders versus the disabilities, but you would kind of in that, since it's very similar, since it's a demand response.
It's
right?
real-time demand response. I'm sorry, real-time demand response, and it's really a hybrid. We are replacing fixed route transit with this real-time demand response microtransit. And so that's kind of where it is. I should have included microtransit on this slide, and will. Today we'll talk about microtransit. As you see, the COVID ridership impacts as we maintain a lot of the sanitization processes that were put in place. That Transportation Demand Management Grant Program will review, look at our electric transit vehicle update, talk about those demand response pilots, and what we're doing with AHS as we further our partnership there, and the community driver program as we move from volunteers to volunteers plus other options to try to better serve the demand response needs that are growing and are costly.
So when you say demand response, is that microtransit and is that everything, or
it's everything. When I talk about demand response, generally speaking, it is the dial-a-ride 24, 48 hours in advance notice. We're seeing an uptick in needs. We're also seeing a reduction in volunteers since the COVID pandemic. And so we're coming up with a way to try to fill that gap between the full transit rate that we would pay or that 61 or 65 cents a mile. What about that space in between? Can we have a different hourly rate? Can we bring folks on to drive their own sedans at the regional level and then maybe become interested in becoming CDL, because we know that there's a paucity of CDL drivers in the state as well. And so almost an entry level driving position. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well.
Do those pilots, maybe you'll talk about this, but those microtransit pilots, do those overlap with the dial-a-ride, or do you need them to be separate for federal regulations or the needs of who's driver?
I think we need to overlap as much as we can and be as equitable and as efficient with Medicaid and elderly and personal disability, general public, job access, all using the same infrastructure and process. We feel that may be the better use, which will be revealed through these 5 pilots that are in disparate communities, trying to figure out is it best in Barrie or Windsor. And so that's part of the initial pilot suite of expectations and plans. We've been working on some studies that are ready to go. The zero fare study and analysis has been sent to the legislature, and happy to present that or have Steve Fauble, our primary consultant, present that analysis. And we do have a conclusion. Intercity assessment every 5 years is required. Yes, sir.
Can we just do with a conclusion?
Sure.
There's a short.
Yeah, it gets complicated as you talk about the impacts on riders versus in urban and rural. In urban systems, you have so much service and so many trips that the impacts of a fare-free service is far greater than in our rural system. In the rural system before COVID, a third were already fare-free. 2 of our providers were entirely fare-free. And so the conclusion is, I think it's worded, and it would be understandable if GMT Urban went back to fares to fill some rural budget issues that they have, while maintaining fare-free outside of the rural area. It's about a $450,000 item for all of the rural area outside of our one city. And Steve did a really good job. Steve Fauble did a good job of showing, you know, the relative diminishing return on fare-free once you get that robust service.
And GMT's announcement is in line with that conclusion.
It is, because they saw this and I think they went right for it. They'll be able to talk about their other pieces. The intercity assessment is every 5 years. We need to show how many people are we serving, how many people have access to intercity, and we have a responsibility to spend 15% of our operating as a way of accessing FTA funds on intercity services, unless we can show that less than 15% still results in a reasonable intercity service. So this is what we did, and right now we're over 50%. But in the future, if we were to make some changes, we have the assessment to allow the governor to make that type of declaration to get out from under that requirement. We don't want to spend money for where we want rather than where it's required through these funding formulas. Route performance report is something done every year, and I have just a slide or two from that study. I'll be more than happy to come here, and that's the deep dive of the 123 routes by class. How are they performing? What does it cost? What's the overall percentage of activity in the state? And that's a big one. That's what we use to assess which routes are performing, which ones may need to be changed or even cut. We haven't used that for any service changes since pre-pandemic. And so we're a little bit behind on that type of activity because we didn't know where we were coming out of.
So is that an internal management report, or is that one of the gazillion reports that we have mandated?
It's mandated, and it'll be done. It's out for comment. Yesterday was the last day for public comment through the providers, and it'll be sent to through the legislature next week.
My question, I guess, for all of us, it's when we are asking for reports. I'm kind of on a one-trick pony here, but the amount of resources and the extent to which that the report has utility. It sounds like the way you're describing it is it provides essential data to help you make sound administrative decisions and a sense of how the money's being spent, who's benefiting, are we getting the return, and so forth. So on this, the way you've talked about it, it seems like it does have utility for both the provider community, the regional transit, as well as statewide administrative purposes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So my question is, am I assuming that that is correct, or should we look at that report, or would you be doing it anyway?
It's the single most important report we do on an annual basis, and the consistency over 20 years has really allowed us to track trends. It also dovetails with our National Transit Database requirement through FTA, which we have to provide a lot of the same data, and then we can slice it up for our own management perspectives. It's also something, so without a mandate, we'd be continuing $15,000 about a year to produce it. It's worth it.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah, exactly. We have a winner.
and people read it, I'm assuming, and yeah,
They do. We a lot of
we
it
should be
is.
reading at least the summary.
I hope I can present, especially this year, as things have changed over the last several years, and we are seeing increased costs and per trip costs. And I think it's time to speak to it, address, and then talk about what we're going to do about those types of things, all coming from our route performance report. So happy to come back and spend a half hour presenting that to you, and I can send that around once it goes to the legislature and have put it in your inboxes as well through Mike. I'm also just because of that route performance report and seeing costs and efficiency declines, I've been putting together a core budget dashboard through the last 7 years, before, during, and after, or with this new normal, of just where we are with operations and admin and preventive maintenance and demand response, local share, state share, all trying to just provide the baseline of data. So any questions that you would have, I would have the ability to just very quickly demonstrate where we are and to identify the areas that we need to work on that are maybe making up more of these cost increases than others. That's just something that our staff is working on right now. So to move forward real quick, The ridership has bounced back from a low of 2021. We're at 70%. We expect 2023 to be closer to the 4.1, 4.2 million at the end of this fiscal year. But that all needs to be completed and audited, and so we'll have those real numbers. But projected, we're still on the upward trend.
Did it make a difference when it went to free fares? What happened with that?
I don't know. I will say that Chittenden County has bounced back. Their in-town routes has bounced back faster than the others. I think you had a lot more need riders, more people relying on that system
Plus,
without
a lot of
other
people
options.
Don't work from home, so that cuts down a lot of traffic. I mean,
It's interesting.
That's gotta be the big figure right here, because, half of the city of Burlington work from home now. That's, wow.
Yeah, my staff continues to produce from their homes primarily. I like to go to the office every day, but you can see on here, overall, the local bus shuttle is reflective of all of these types of travel or ridership bounce backs. The one area that is an outlier that isn't bouncing back quite as fast is this commuter route. And just as you had mentioned, it's not a surprise. The real question is, what are we going to do? Or do we reduce frequency from 3 times a day to 2 times a day?
Do that, then you lose people that are on that bus.
And you'll hear from them, and I will too. And it's not something we relish, but
It's a no-win. I don't know what's gonna happen. This work at home is gonna stay, or I think it's here for a long time.
I've got a gentleman who's in his 60s who works from North Burlington, operations manager at GMT for 20 years. It seems like our best producers continue to produce. And for me, I'm very thankful he's got that opportunity. Maybe he's going to stay on for a little bit longer. And Tim has been producing the same way, since he's probably come out of college. But anything like that has helped. I also was able to rehire our financial person from Morrisville when we moved to Barrie. She said, that's a bridge too far. And that extra, I'm going to work for AHS. And she did. Well, since speaking with her at Barbara's Memorial, I was able to convince her to come back to VTrans. And we're picking her up in the Morrisville Park and Ride, or not Morrisville Park and Ride, the Waterbury Park and Ride when Tim comes down on his 2 days a week. And so that type of stuff, I do have a better staff that's happier as a result. I don't know if that's the way it is for everybody and what they do.
So many different scenarios.
Yeah. So that's where we are with ridership, but in costs, you can see why the core dashboard and what we're trying to look at is really identify why that 49 million in 2022 became 52 million. We know gas costs. We know ridership was down and there wasn't the 2.2 million in fares. We have new contracts, union and otherwise. Everyone's paying differently. And so VPTA, the Vermont Public Transit Association, and I and our staff had a conversation yesterday. We'll be putting together an efficiency committee and really diving into getting back to the sustainable services that we've been providing.
But that require elimination of routes.
Potentially, and because that route performance report had been used every year to really look at those 4 or 5 routes, they haven't been performing since we started. There's been a change, the business went out of business, those types of things. We hadn't made any changes, so now we have about 12 routes that are not meeting those thresholds, and commuters are not least of which, but there's other adjustments to make. We just sent out the draft of the route performance report and said, folks, on those underperforming routes, looking at 52 million and looking at what we need to do, I need you to ride the buses and to assess and to see what they would suggest on making those improvements.
Or could you downsize the size of the vehicle, and then if it's under 16, you don't have to have a CDL driver? Those are all kinds of options that would be part of this analysis.
Absolutely.
And as you can imagine, we're already starting to get emails from people who are concerned about cutting costs or cutting routes. I'm getting one from Northeast Kingdom Trails they think they're on the list, and we'd rather not see that. Trails don't ask for a lot of help from the state, but we're going to put our plug in for that to keep that route going if we can.
We had that conversation yesterday after the conversation when we brought that forward. I was like, boy, look at Burke. But it was the first year. We usually do 3-year New Start assessments. The IIJA allows us to use CMAQ dollars for more than just the 3-year New Start. We can now fund that forever. That's a huge difference because of our funding formula. And when I go through the budget, I'll demonstrate that we've got a year or two, the Canadian border's open. We understand that there's some really good tweaks that they've made. We don't need to cut, we need to fully address those routes and maybe make cuts where they make sense. But that's a great example of where it doesn't make sense at this point. It's taken a long time to get to that point. To pull the rug out from under this after the first year would be probably premature.
Yeah, I think it takes a long time for people to figure out where their work's going, and it's the service is there, and so I'm happy to hear that.
That didn't take long. I had the conversation yesterday morning. The Transportation Demand Management Grant Program was started by these committees 3 years ago. It's called the Mobility and Transportation Innovations Grant Program, or the MTI Grant Program. It's managed by Dan Courier, our Go Vermont Program Manager. He replaced me as the previous Go Vermont Program Manager. And it really is to help people access more modes, reduce the use of single occupancy vehicles, reduce greenhouse gases, all of those things that you see in this wheel of TDM tools. And through the first 2 years, we have been supporting microtransit pilots and studies, feasibility studies with those funds, bike share and e-bike programs, public transit rider support, incentives, communications, those types of programs. We did provide a telework resource through CAPMA, who is really trying to help the Hill institutions wrestle with this new normal that Senator Mazza was talking about. And the car share mobility support, we are very much involved in those projects. Dan Courier is more than happy and looking forward to coming and sharing more details about this type of activity. This year, more e-bike share programs, expanding that. They have been utilized and people are interested. We're starting new operations, 5 new microtransit pilots I'll get to right after this. Very thankful that and we're going to be so we'll also, that's a good example of being able to pull in the new housing. And they're saying, hey, maybe they have some e-bikes to utilize some mobility out of those hours. We're really excited about that pilot. And certainly we use some of these funds to try to get people back on the bus and ensure that it's safe and clean and fare-free, or it was. So this was basic information generally for the house's benefit, but if you remember, the concept is moving from a route, hoping that our times and our bus stops are serving the most people, to just drawing the regional service for demand response, allowing for pickups closer to an elderly or person with a disability or a general public member, bringing them as close to their destination as possible. No surprise, salespeople telling me it's going to increase ridership by 3.5%. That hasn't materialized, as you know.
Cost, wouldn't it?
And it did increase cost to an extent. Right, what we did in Montpelier was we had 3 vehicles already through the capital shuttle, the city commuter, or the city circulator, and Montpelier Hospital Hill. So we already had 3 of those vehicles. The transition to microtransit was maintain 3 vehicles with a $30,000 software as a service with their tablets, and now with a little bit more of a call center, it's costing a little bit more. The pilot has not been able to be managed the way that we were anticipating to begin with. Driver shortages reduced those buses from 3 to 2, and then the numbers just started kind of plateauing. It was a real disappointment to V-Trans. Not that GMT could have done a lot about it, but we are pressing them to put the service back on as designed. So I do have these apples to apples comparisons in terms of cost. But it's a new technology. We have successful case studies all over the country. The current ridership was plateauing before the pandemic, and we just thought this may be more flexible and more convenient for all these people. And it does speak to equity, because the people with Medicaid or the elderly, disabled, and the general public are all using the same infrastructure and system and vehicles. Everybody gets the same. And so in Montpelier, it has worked to do that, but we're learning that 70% of the trips are the Montpelier Hospital Hill route. So do we reinstitute that with that one vehicle, and then use the other two vehicles for demand response to and from that trunk service? Almost a last mile, first mile, which is overwhelmingly nationwide, the most common use of microtransit, getting people to the trains and the buses, to the fixed route services. So, but for us, as you can see in the map, we have 5 new pilots that we were able to fund primarily through the assistance of these transportation committees, where you made available $1.25 million for the non-federal share for these 3 pilots over the next 3 years. So Windsor is starting next month. Manchester is putting their RFP out for that type of service.
Starting service.
Starting service. Yeah, and it's a big planning and outreach, trying to stand up the advisory council. The biggest metric to success that we've seen is community involvement, and you've been involved in this one, and that's been key. Middlebury, Barry, as you can see, Rutland, Manchester, Windsor. All of these are so disparate because we're trying to identify the best use for microtransit service in Vermont. And we're hoping that in addition to Montpelier, that will be partially revealed through these next 5 studies. Is it an area like Windsor without public transit, but has quite a bit of demand response service for the elderly and Medicaid? Is it a Morrisville, or is it Barrie, where we are going to bring folks from a larger area into the city to access the core services? We don't know, and I don't think anyone does. I'm on a transportation research board, and I'm on the webinar trail around the country, providing our experience and plans, and we're far ahead of most rural areas.
And Russ, are any of these going to be with vans instead of the small cutaways? Because I think that was one of the Montpelier weaknesses.
Yeah, that was a concern, and certainly I can understand that. We have funded GMT to purchase the vans. When you're talking about a 7-person van and getting in, and you may be, right next to, unhoused folks and those types of things. I don't know what that's going to do, but it certainly would help a little bit with operations. Not much in terms of the cost per hour, but it could be a better marketing piece, and it could be more efficient. And why wouldn't we want to do that? Morrisville is looking at vans, not cutaways. And then the CDL driver, as you mentioned, trying to, deal with that issue.
Commuters with 15-passenger van. I drove it for a long time on Route 2. But it takes a lot to organize it. You've got a bill and so forth. I had one question, and you keep talking about the Medicaid piece. And is there a current discussion around reimbursement? And is there an interplay between zero fare and Medicaid rules that would say, if you're giving Senator Ingalls free, why should we pay for me, who might be going to a Medicaid funded appointment? So are we actually compromising our ability to get those Medicaid dollars with our fare free? And I'm just asking the question. And in other words, free is for everybody, whether you're on, a Medicaid, which does require that. And so what is the status of
Yeah.
that?
Free to the individual is not free to the system, right?
I know,
mean,
there's
these are
no
all-
such thing as
yeah.
a free lunch,
Right.
and there's no such, it's
There is
getting
a Bobby
paid for
Yeah.
somewhere. But the whole thinking behind the braiding of the Medicaid and the E&D was to get the advantage of that Medicaid funding, which is a lot of on-demand, because particularly in rural areas. So I was just wondering to what extent we complicate or have a negative impact on revenues from that program by this fare free policy.
To an extent, it is affecting our demand response services generally are free to the individual. And that is the services that the NEMT, non-emergency medical transportation program uses, is that infrastructure, that dial-a-ride service. In those instances where you could offer a bus and you can charge twice the fare, those revenues are being lost. And in Chittenden County, it's a much larger number because it's got more buses. For us, we're not seeing an appreciable difference. There's other factors like the per member per week numbers or clients have gone down since COVID. And so there's fewer dollars going out to cover those types of trips. And I believe VPTA just signed a 6-month extension with DEVA, Department of Vermont Health Access, to continue providing the services while addressing some of the shortfalls that have been identified with these new costs that are associated with transportation services. So in the zero fare study, we do show that in addition to potentially going back to fares in the urban area is to charge a nominal fare for demand response microtransit. It's a little more expensive, as you mentioned, and to capture ADA services as well, we can charge double fare. If there's no fare, we're losing that. It's a big killer for it's a big issue for these areas.
Sure.
And we're hoping that we can continue to work with DEVA and VPTA to overcome those challenges. If we have a better system and a better service in place, we're gonna have to find a way to make this work for everybody. But your braided service model is something that we continue to try to maintain. And we're even thinking of going out on the street with a study to identify what the braided service model in Vermont means for all of Vermont, not just our program or the DEVA program, and what it means in the future as we look at these types of services.
Well, it was, I think, around 13 million at one point, so it was not inconsequential.
It's 15 now,
15.
and that's the delta they're trying to work on. But it's been challenging. It's going to be challenging for us too because of these cost increases that we're seeing across the board.
We have a hugely successful program in South Hero with the Cider. How is that funded? Because I know a lot of donations, but that's a huge success up there.
It is.
Public transit, they do all the private, bring them to doctor's appointments and everything. It's a
Meals
unique
on Wheels?
system.
Yeah.
Is that any funding at all from some?
They're a subcontractor to GMT, and so GMT isn't out in that area providing the services. They're paying Cider. Cider pays for that 20% non-federal match with those local funds you're talking about.
That's why we donated.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from.
And Cider really benefits from doing more than just transportation, not only Meals on Wheels,
Right.
but all the social engagement that they do
Yeah.
is really a model that could be replicated and serve other areas.
Other areas do it. State, there's Cider's the only one I know.
Not like Cider, not like
Okay.
Cider.
Very successful. Very
yeah.
successful.
They've done some with RCT with school, the kids as different school schedules, transport, for example. And so there are, but I don't think on the Meals on Wheels sort of that, but the volunteer drivers are, you're gonna put somebody up, a vehicle up on the Newark Ridge, you probably are using a volunteer, but they're harder to come by.
we're curious if, in addition to NEMT and our fixed route services being braided, is there more AHS activities that can be managed by VPTA? Because again, if we have these regional mobility managers doing more for, other programs, reach up and the like, there could be some additional benefits. And that's kind of what we wanted to pull out of that assessment of the braided service model. How much more could we do? And would that be more effective than having different divisions and different entities or agencies trying to largely replicate or become redundant in some of these scheduling dispatch functions? A lot to assess, but right now, first is fix it and maintain the current
What
service.
are we doing scheduling? Where would that redundancy occur right now?
Like Department of Corrections, and they have a secure transportation. DCF has kids that require child seats. They have contracts with other people that are
Oh, yeah.
not VPTA, and so they're making those calls and trying to match
Oh,
that
yeah,
up.
because DCF had this big scheme, they were gonna save money, and it didn't. We budgeted the savings and it didn't materialize.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
As far as the sightings on these new places, are you sighting them around hospitals, or is that the main driver?
Services were a part of the consideration. When we did these feasibility studies, we did 12, and we went to our 6 local providers. Advanced Transit's small enough and isn't looking at this right now. We said, let's pick 2 for feasibility studies, and then let's see what that means. And that is the areas that they, in the regional level, are hearing about the paucity of demand or services. Morrisville, there's going to be a new housing program that will be looped in. It's going to be Copley and most of the residential areas. Barry, it's going to be a little bit different, but that is part of it, is connecting people to essential services. Absolutely.
And are all your vehicles, and I feel kind of foolish about asking this question, right? All your vehicles, are you compliant with, did you have to be compliant with ADA, or so everyone? So you must have a little problem with some of these vans. I mean, when you're trying to cut services down, are these vans are ADA compliant for the most part?
For the most part, if we're going to use federal transit money, you're going to have to be ADA, but we have a bunch of vans that have ramps that will hold 1 wheelchair, and that's maybe all we need. And certainly all the cutaways and the other buses we use are ADA compliant. And that does allow us to manage them in a little bit more fungible way, where we don't have to worry about, that vehicle needs to pick somebody up and it's not ADA compliant, and now that it becomes very inequitable. So that's where we are. Just a few more slides, and I very much appreciate the extra time. A transit app. When we go to the airport, we look at the train schedules. It's the first thing you want to know, where's the bus? And 123 routes are captured throughout Vermont. It's free to the public. We spend about $15,000 to provide this service. And it really is what you see in cities and the like. It's right sized for Vermont. It's working very well. And we just upgraded to what they call the Transit Royale there in Montreal. The Transit Royale allows for feedback. How was the bus on time? Was it clean? Rate it and make comments. That's the type of information that is more important than any other information we have that we can get, and it's new. And so this is a good step in the right direction. E-buses, you're looking at an electric model from Latenda. This is being developed outside of Montreal for no coincidence there, or just a coincidence there. We work with VEIC and put applications together for a low and no emissions bus program with the utility, the provider, with VTrans, and with their assessment and ongoing case studies, it has really proven to win the day. We're 6 for 6 in applications, and as a result, we're doing pretty well. We just did sign a MOU with the Department of Environmental Conservation for $2.2+ million from VW funds to help on that match, non-federal match. They do, and they approached us, and I wished I had approached them previously, but we now have the ability to use those funds for the non-federal match on these awards, which can be 85% federal. So this could mean that we replace 25 large buses. We can't replace cutaways with the VW funds. Large buses, and actually spend less from state and local funds than if we replace it with a diesel bus. That's a good step in the right place. We're learning a lot. The overall range that the buses currently have can replace 80% of our routes today. And those ranges and those specs are improving every year. And certainly we've got a ways to go. The big surprise here has been the charging issues. Because
See Russ along the extension cord, they follow the bus.
I see that. Yeah.
They only go as far as the extension cord.
I'm photoshopping that out. But yeah, and so this is a good example of these buses haven't hit the US market. We will get the first 4 that the FTA has waived to come into the market. And they've been developed from the ground up. They're lighter, the cabins are heated, are insulated for better HVAC efficiencies, dual turn, and they're 7 to 12-year buses. Right now, we replace cutaways as 5-year buses.
Wow.
We cannot buy 5-year electric buses because of that increased capital. We are only going to look at 7 or 12-year buses. This meets the fits the bill, and we're
Will
looking
batteries go
forward.
that long? 7 to 12?
This one, 160, 180 miles, which would cover.
No, the battery
Yeah,
life.
life.
Life
Oh.
of the battery.
So we do we have been purchasing warranties on that, on these,
They're pretty expensive, I understand. The batteries are a big factor.
a couple $100,000,
Yeah,
absolutely.
no engine, it's gonna have something.
As the good news is we haven't seen batteries being the issue, and we need them to last for 12 years, and then maybe they can be used downstream on mechanics or stuff. Well, but we are protected at this point until we can get through some of these life cycles and
Yeah,
see.
it's a learning curve, yeah.
Well, and that learning curve again, because our phones charge and our cars charge, I wasn't expecting that half of the downtime related to e-buses are because of the charging infrastructure. And it's just a lot of electrons going in, and that's a lesson learned. And we're looking at other options. But that's, it's been an overall positive experience, but not without its hiccups.
Where did you say these were made?
These are made out of outside of Montreal, and they're standing up a facility outside of Detroit. And one of those
Is it different than the other electric bus company for Quebec? There's.
Nova is the other one, and they are totally different, although a lot of the managers and people are from Nova.
Okay, last night.
Well, it sounds like though, given the group that we had in here before, and I think we're going to continue to hear it, it's that as this technology comes forward, we're going to have to learn. We're going to have to learn, and if there's going to be some learning, try not to repeat the mistakes of the past, but you're going to learn, and there's going to be some failures, but that can't define the program, that
Yeah.
you can't.
Interesting, and yeah, it was just one of those things where it was a blind spot for me personally, and but now we know that we have to redouble our efforts on the charging infrastructure considerations.
How many are running now? Because I see the one electric bus sometimes.
There's 6 on the road now, 2 being registered, another 4 to 6 coming in this fiscal
They're in
year.
regular service.
And they're in regular service, and they're putting them around to show different, usages, the hilly areas, the longer routes, and they do want the public to see. One of the big limiting factors is the cutaway replacements haven't had the range that we needed. The 140, 180, they're about 100 now. So we've been waiting for testing to come through for a better mousetrap or a better option. I think we have one, but all I know is what the last salesperson tells me.
Right.
So
And
we'll
in the
wait.
cold weather, have you had any, like really cold weather where they just, the range is so much?
About a 30% give back. And the HVAC is such a pull and it's such a draw that many of these models have a diesel heater on top of the bus.
Yeah.
And even though they comply with emissions, it's not something that
Doesn't have good luck.
no, well, and it reduces the greenhouse gas pickups. And so but that's why this cabin is insulated. right? And that's why they're using lighter componentry for all of those things that so many of these electric buses were just take the drivetrain out, put in that, see what happens. And they're learning as well.
Right, exactly.
And so this one, we're
It says
excited.
a heat pump for heat.
It
That's what
does.
they're doing with cars.
Yep, that's exactly right. They say it works great until 10 degrees or colder. We got
You
some.
know, we have a wood fire car.
Yeah. Coal.
Oh, okay.
I was in a ski band once with a wood stove. That was cool.
It says, the nominal fees that you're charging back, now, and you probably said it earlier, and I apologize. What's that putting back into the system as far as monies, the nominal fees from the amount of, you're charging now for fares that you weren't charging before? What's that put back in the system money
About
wise?
$2.2 million if ridership continues on the current trend. And when we provide the fare-free analysis, you'll see it pretty spelled out, 400,000, 450, something like that on the rural side,
Yeah.
2.2 on the urban.
Yeah.
And that's why in urban, they're looking at a different approach.
Yeah.
We are partnering with AHS not only with their DIVA program, but we have a recovery and job access ride. So we have demand response for elderly people with disabilities. We now offer services for those in recovery to keep them in recovery, to access the appointments and counseling that they wouldn't otherwise be eligible for. And we're also offering job access for a week or two, just a week or two, to get to and from a new job opportunity, get a paycheck to fix your car, buy a car, get a carpool. We'll work with the employer to get a van pool together. But job access is one of the best ways to keep people in recovery. And it's also to keep people from spiraling, into having to be in recovery. We've lost about half of our volunteer drivers. We're moving the program from our volunteer driver program to our community driver program. And
You lost the meeting. They couldn't do it because of regulations, or they just don't want to do it because they don't want to be in a car.
COVID-related issues, primarily the risks
Or like regulations.
concerns. There's nothing to keep people from maintaining, but when we're bringing in the masks and asking people to pre-screen and identify if they have COVID, that did scare. And the average age is well over 60 for our community drivers or volunteer drivers. So we want to build that back, but we've always relied on volunteers to do 60 or 65% of these 750,000 demand response trips. And it was always tenuous maybe. And so what we thought is we have the full allocated transit rate at $100 or so per hour. We have a 65 cent per mile option. What's that middle ground? Is there an hourly wage that we can pay people to drive the sedans at the providers? Can we contract with them like a Uber or Lyft driver, giving them the tablet and giving them a different rate so that it's costing us $30 an hour rather than $100 an hour? And so we're really trying to fill in that middle area, $40,000 media buy. We're hoping that it results in an extra 100 statewide volunteers and trying out some of these pilots for those other options. And if we get somebody driving for pay rather than for volunteer mileage reimbursement, will they become a CDL driver? Can we get them in the pipeline?
There's DMVs going by, there's some.
Oh, yeah.
There's a retirement.
Oh, they are, that's,
Yeah.
How many trucks?
DMV vehicles.
Yeah, how many trucks do they have?
Oh, yeah, they got plenty, don't worry about that. They, wow. You be overloaded on the interstate today, you don't have to worry about it. Look at those trucks. They really got it. Wow. Some more is coming.
Unmarked.
Got to check with Wanda here. Yeah, right.
And I'm all set. I will just, you mentioned Commissioner Manoli.
Yeah.
She is putting in these posters at all the DMV stops as well. I'm trying to help us. So another, intra-agency coordination to help us. But I'm done. And thank you for the extra time.
Exciting stuff, very exciting stuff.
Always a good update.
Yeah, that's very exciting, very informational.
The dairy project, that's the one with Capstone.
No, that's a different.
Separate one.
And so that's part of that middle area at $68 an hour. And if GMT is providing those van trips at $82 an hour, again, bending that cost curve down, can they help us get more volunteer drivers in addition to provide those trips themselves? And they just signed the contract, looking forward to that. And then we have the microtransit in Barrie for the last mile, first mile with Capstone. Is that going to be that mobility for all model? I don't know, but this might be our best opportunity at this time to see.
That contract, because I know there were some issues earlier on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We
That's all
got through
settled.
those issues.
Both the microtransit and the other.
Well, microtransit, they're wondering, GMT is wondering if they should do a turnkey approach with, let's say, a VIA, where they provide the vehicle, vans, drivers, and GMT just pays an hourly rate. That may be one of the nuances of that model to see when we go statewide and we expand microtransit. Are we going to do more of that turnkey transportation as a service rather than software as a service? And I'm happy to come
He
in.
is interested in doing.
Yes, yep. They're scaling up to such an extent. They did warn me that they're not going to be bidding on one vehicle here and there. But Barrie was interesting enough to them to do that. And they know that Montpelier or Vermont is the leader in micro transit in the country. So they're maintaining that relationship with us. Okay. And I was asked to deliver this for the next presentation. And that's from Andrea. And yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So we canceled the last one.
Okay, yeah.
She's here, okay, yep, she's ready to go.
She knows that.
Hi,
Hi.
Amy Beth.
Okay.
Amy, all right, you're right on.
Whoa, you guys are,
We don't waste
We're
time.
ahead.
Yeah, we're right
all
on.
right, give me 1 second here. I gotta cancel my presentation.
So we're not doing this with Patrick.
No, I would cancel that one because we're without James.
Yeah, good to that. I think it's good one for her.
Yeah, so it's just.
There you go.
Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Do I need to be wired in anywhere here or just go into the Zoom link and go?
You'll make sure it's closed. What's your?
Hmm?
What's your?
Okay, great.
All right, we have Amy Dell, Bureau Director of Policy, Planning and Research. Wow, a lot of stuff.
I know, pretty scary stuff. Our state network's a little slow today.
Yeah, some problems across the country and even Vermont. Some
Really?
with, some. Well, the FAA system was down yesterday, and then something was going on with Vermont. I can't remember now what it was, but something was.
Those airlines, they might as well pack it up. Oh my God, what a mess the last
It's
one.
helping the train.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That's right. Thought of that. Buses.
Join without video or with? You don't need to see me, right?
Get this system fixed up or something.
My mic is off. It says they're on. Is it a Zoom setting?
Yeah.
Says they're muted.
Seems to fix.
How about now? We're good?
Good.
Okay, turn on my video. Keeps going on and on. Hey,
Here we
thanks
go.
committee. Sorry about the little technical difficulties.
Okay, we're still ahead of time.
You did better than I would have.
Well, as you folks may know, we actually don't use Zoom very much at the state. We're required to use Teams. So when we have to use it, we're a little fumbly. So thanks for having me. As the chair said, I'm Amy Bell. I'm the current director of the Policy Planning and Research section. And I replaced Joe Segali back in August of this past year. So you may remember Joe from previous presentations. He retired and I've taken over for him. But I have been with the agency for about 25 years and worked in the policy and planning section for a little over 15. So I've got a lot of familiarity with what we do. So, so we'll get started. This is a really brief presentation. I think I'm going to get you guys out of here quicker than you thought. But so the policy planning and research section of the agency is really basically comprised of 5 different sections. We have obviously policy, planning, research, but then we have these other sections. We have the development review and permitting services section, and we also have the mapping section. So it's a pretty diverse section, and I report directly to Michelle Boomhauer, whom you all know very well. I always say about policy and planning, we're kind of the incubator of new and maybe not always great ideas, but all the federal initiatives and all the, when you folks come up with an idea for a legislative study, we oftentimes will be the section that staffs that study, gets consultants and convenes internal stakeholder groups and external stakeholder meetings with communities to discuss those topics, come up with a report, that sort of thing. So we're kind of the place where we're the kind of the incubator of all the new ideas that come in, whether it's a federal mandate or whether it's something that comes up at the legislative level or it's something that we as an agency and organization are interested in pursuing. So policy and planning, I'm going to just kind of give brief overviews of each of these individual sections. One thing I forgot to mention, there's 22 full-time employees that are part of this section of the agency. And we deal with a lot of really diverse topics and issues. So I'm just going to list a few here to give you just a general sense of what we do, but certainly if you have any questions. So we do all our statewide plans and legislative studies, all the federal policy development and grant applications. We oversee the Better Connections program. That's a grant program run through the agency. The Transportation Planning Initiative, which is our cooperative relationship with the regional planning commissions, that's administered and overseen through our section. We also do corridor management planning now. We've got a number of plans that are currently ongoing, the US 2 ones that are mentioned on the slide, and Route 4 over in Hartford, Woodstock. We also do all the long-range planning. So we have a long-range plan we're required to have by federal statute. That's something that we oversee. And then we do all the modal planning. Doesn't matter whether it's public transit, bike and ped, park and ride, highway, freight, all of those are overseen through our section. And then another big initiative that we're overseeing right now is the Transportation Equity Framework work that's underway with the agency. That's also through our section. We do all the national and international coordination. So all this stuff related to interactions with folks at the federal level, New England, as well as the Canadian provinces, all that happens through our section. And then we do all the monitoring and implementation of any of the directives that come down from the feds in the federal legislation, such as the IIJA.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
That little wall that they put
Sure.
that artwork on there. Because I heard that wall was coming down or had to be rebuilt. Then I saw they put the artwork on it, but maybe that artwork's easy to come off. Do you know?
If they're actual panels that are attached, so they can be removed quite easily, yeah. And I wanted to highlight these, this is an example of
I
an
like
idea.
it, but I just wondered about if they're gonna have to tear the wall
Yeah.
down, but we're gonna lose the art.
This is an example of an issue that came in. We were getting lots of requests from the agency for artwork in the public right of way, but yet we didn't have a policy regarding it. We had inconsistent responses across the state, and then it's like, all right, let's put some time and effort in and convene an internal stakeholders group to work on developing a policy. So we have this new policy called art installations in the state highway facilities, and you can see some examples in this. The bottom picture is actually some paintings, some murals that have been painted on the interstate.
I thought it was just.
These are here in Montpelier. This is at Gateway Park.
Yeah.
If you go down Route 2, you don't see them from the road. They're on the back side, but their plans for up to 15 in total down here on these piers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how the graffiti artists respect them or not.
You know, these were put up last fall,
Yeah, I know
and to my knowledge, there has not been any vandalism.
Yeah.
And there are a series that are over on the city did on the bike path as well, and those have been up for an extended period of time and have limited issues with vandalism.
How they get their.
So that's an example of-
Paint at night, these people, they crawl over the edge of the interstate, I'm telling you, something.
I know it.
How they do it.
So, you know, that's an example I just wanted to give of something that came up and how we resolved it, and our staff oversaw that. I mentioned the Transportation Planning Initiative, and this is the agency's 30-year now. We just celebrated 30 years of our cooperative relationship with the regional planning commissions across the state and with the Chittenden County MPO. And I've just provided some statistics here. This comes right from our performance indicating work that we do with them. We want to find out how many communities are participating. You can see the numbers are pretty impressive. 241 communities in the state actively participate in transportation planning. That's a pretty remarkable number for a state of our size. And then you can see some of the other statistics. A lot of the monies also, I think that's really important to highlight, it's about 50% of the monies that we give the regional planning commissions go directly to support of municipalities. So it is a really important, the RPC is a really important connection.
Is that just a budget formula grant, or is there
It's
competitive grant
it's a formula grant, yeah.
by size of the district?
Yeah, it's based on the number of towns that the RPC serves, the number of road miles, both state and local roads, as well as population. So it's a formula based.
What's like how much money are we talking? What's the
I think total right now the total was around $2.4 million, somewhere in that range.
The 10 or whatever.
Yep. And then on the right-hand side is just the coverage map. We have individual staff members who are assigned to specific regions. So we have direct liaisons working with those regions and being our eyes and ears, and also helping these regions. But also the regions are tremendous help to us. They help us fulfill a lot of our federal and state requirements as far as public participation. They're an immediate outlet. If we need a response to something, we've got an outlet to just say, what do you guys think about this? And that's really unique and really valuable to us, because it's been a really beneficial collaborative relationship, and we've gotten lots of really good feedback over the years. So then I mentioned we also have the research section, and we're federally mandated to have a research program. And currently Emily Parkany is the current manager of that program, and we have 5 research projects that are completed this year, 7 more that are ongoing. She does a lot with technology transfer and transfer of information through lots of symposiums, newsletters, meetings. She's very connected in both the national as well as the regional level with other research institutions. And then we do a lot of collaboration with other Vermont institutions, you know, whether they're colleges or they could be consulting firms. There's a lot of consulting firms that do a lot of really good quality research work in Vermont. And then also, as I said, she's very engaged at both the New England level as well as at the federal level.
Is that the team that works on like how to use recycled glasses as road bed?
She would be overseeing any research that would be conducted to see how we might utilize that. And then,
Wherever it works.
right, and then after that research was conducted, then it would be sort of handed off to the program manager in that area to figure out how might we then start utilizing this product and or this method in our actual practices. So again, it's very much the incubator of an idea and how might we then transfer it into meaningful use.
And you work with the universities.
Yes, universities and there's a number of consulting firms that also have significant research arms. Then we have the mapping section, and they're kind of the unsung heroes, I say. They're kind of, you don't hear a lot about them, but they do a lot of really cool things, and we all rely on them tremendously. All the maps you see generated by the agency is a result of our mapping section. There's 5 people in that section. They do all the town highway maps. You're familiar with that with your work, probably with your municipalities. They do all of the town highway mileage certificates. They maintain all of the GIS data related to transportation that all state entities and municipalities use. So they really play an important role, and they support a lot of our other agency activities. They do way more than just planning work. They support the entire agency. They just are housed within the planning division. And then they deal with all the town highway reclassifications, and they maintain one of our really recent things. And when Andrea has her chance to speak to you, I understand she's been delayed for today because you're not going to have a quorum, but when she does able to speak about our environmental policy and sustainability program, this transportation resiliency planning tool has actually been moved over into her shop, but it still is maintained through our mapping section, the actual application. And then we have the development review and permitting services, and these are folks who deal specifically with permits to the state highway system. So anytime someone is doing any kind of form of development or a utility needs a permit for work in the state highway, our utilities permitting services folks are the ones who whom they interact with. They do a lot with trying to, do access management to ensure safety along the corridors and that sort of thing. And then we also have a staff person who oversees Act 250. He's the person who basically spearheads our response to any Act 250 applications, as the agency is a party to many of those applications. And then also the same person oversees our Act 145, the transportation impact fee management process. That came through, was it 2017 maybe, you folks? That sound about right? It's the basically having developers pay small amounts over time towards improvements. Instead of this, this used to have this problem with the last person in paid for all the improvements on the roadway. That's what the Act 145 process is. It's basically bringing in funds in pieces and parts based on number of vehicle trips to then go towards large scale projects, so that the last developer in doesn't have to spend an inordinate amount of money on improvements. And this is my last slide, and I'm just leaving it with you just because if you ever have any need to reach out to any of the staff in my section, this is kind of a functional breakdown. It's got everyone's contact information, and then as well, sort of topically, what are the topic areas that they specialize in. And one thing I neglected to mention at the beginning with the org chart is I mentioned, so between last year and this year, we've had a considerable discussion in-house about breaking out. There's 5 sections currently in policy planning and research. Last year, there was a 6th, and that was the environmental policy section was also part of ours. And now the current proposal is to actually move that section, which Andrea Wright over here represents. And Andrea's section is dealing with all of the climate, energy, EV. She's got a huge lift, and sort of the newest and evolving things that we're doing are in Andrea's section. And Andrea will be doing her own presentation at another time. But it's in planning now, and it will stay in planning. It's just going to be doing a direct report to Michelle. That's the difference. So we're sort of elevating it organizationally And also additional staff have been hired. So at the time, a year ago, there was only 2 staff people. Now there are 3, and there's soon to be 2 more. So
So that'd be Patrick Murphy, the work that he did.
exactly, yep. Patrick and Andrew, yeah. So just wanted to let you know that Andrew will be giving you more details. Technically, right now, I think you're still part of policy planning and research, but with this legislative and budget round, she's gonna have her own budget line item. And assuming everyone is in agreement that this change is beneficial, then that change will be formalized. So that's it for me.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Andrew, about today, but we had, one is out, and the other one had to leave, so
It's okay.
I didn't want to mess it all up, but.
It'd be better for you if they're here, that they get it here.
Yeah, I definitely would prefer that, and it sounds like Michelle will try to schedule it so that we can
Yeah.
talk about the program and the budget all at
Senator
once.
Chitten's been out for the week, Senator Kitchen had to leave, so I said, I'd like to have more, everybody here. So,
Yeah.
uh,
A lot going on with climate and energy.
And are you new, not that we're taking your testimony, but how long have you been with?
I've been with the agency for 22 years, always in an environmental capacity, but I'm new to policy planning. You guys heard from Dan Dutcher last year,
oh, yeah.
so he retired.
Right.
And I took over.
2 years ago, I don't think last year he was here, I think last year we
Right,
heard from
he-
Patrick.
Right at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the electrification stuff Patrick came in to present on. 'Cause he's overseeing that part.
He didn't seem that old then, but like how many?
He's right on the, he's just about like a lucky retiree, you know?
Yeah.
He's in his early 60s, I think, so, yeah. He's having a good time.
Who was it? Said your wife was there for 2 days?
2 days, I went back to work for the feds.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah, thank